They call them.
Sharecroppers.
No, I'm not talking about the family. I'm talking about the people that actually brought them to Louisiana. Well, no, they weren't called slave traders. Well, let's just use the word farmers for right now. But anyway, there were about four brothers, and they this land in Louisiana and all it was just before the Civil War, was just land that was there, and no one had claimed it. So these brothers, and there were four brothers, and there were four plantations from Shreveport down all the way to Kingston and on down that way. But the major plantation that most of our ancestors came from was called the Allendale Plantation. Now, the Allendale Plantation, if you leave Shreveport on Linwood and you go straight down Linwood from Shreveport all the way down to the Stonewall Frison Road, that's the road where you go to Ned's house and all of that. All of that land, that vast land, was the Annandale Plantation. And that's the plantation where most of our ancestors came from. Now, how in the world do I know that? Well, I happened to find, through all the research that we did, a list of the people that were on the Annandale Plantation after the Civil War. And after the Civil War was over, blacks were free, but they didn't really have anywhere to go. So they stayed on the plantations or somewhere near where they were when they were slaves. So on the Allendale Plantation, I have the list here from 1866 to 67, the names of the people that were on that plantation that were there. And there are four names that, so we get me to where you want me to go. There were four names on this list that was on that plantation that are significant to us in the Graham Scott. One of them was Mingo Graham. Yes. M-I-N-G-O. Now, when Spook Papa talked, he called him what?
Mango. Mango.
Yes. Mango or Mango. But the name was Mingo. And we found that in the records on the Annandale Plantation. And there was also Esther Graham, Thomas Graham, and Mingo Jr. Now, Mingo Jr. would be mine and my siblings' great-grandfather. Mingo was Mingo was the person who was on the plantation who more than likely was the one that came from South Carolina, as best we can tell. So Mingo had several children, Mingo Jr., and then there was one by the name of Eli. These are Mingo Jr.'s children now. Mingo Jr.'s children, one was named Eli. Eli Graham. Now, who was that?
Your grandfather.
That would have been who would that? Who would Eli have been to us? Our grandfather would have been Eli. So Eli would be Spook Papa or Sam Graham. Yeah. So that's kind of the history there, and there's a lot more to it. It's so much information, and I put together a folder for both Sam and Elsie. But let's talk about Sam, because when you look at history and you look at looking back at the genealogy, sometimes it's easier to follow the male than it is the female, on the names and that type thing. So we find this plantation in Louisiana down 171, and I'm going to read you just a little bit about that particular plantation. It is called the Allendale Plantation. It is home of Mr. and Mrs. Henry Marshall. Anybody know those names? Believed to be the oldest house in the section of the parish. That house is still there. It's down Linwood Avenue, and it is open. You can go in and, I don't know if it's regular tours, but the family of Henry Marshall still own that property, and that house is still there. As is the house at Land's End and University and Myrtle Hill. And they got a lot of land, pretty much just given to them, so they left South Carolina and came down, and they got the land, and they brought the people with them to help them work the land, farm the land, and build the houses and all there. So, the home of Mr. and Mrs. Henry Marshall, it says in the history, and I'm just reading it as it's written, believed to be the oldest house in this section of the parish. It is of a log structure, part of which was standing when Colonel John Marshall of South Carolina purchased it in 1835. Now they say purchased, but it wasn't very much. In the central hall of the original log walls can be seen a hand hewn, and it was put together with pegs. The five sons of Colonel John Marshall served with distinction in the Confederate Army. Henry Marshall, the present owner, was named for his great uncle, Henry Marshall, who at the time built Land's End on the adjoining plantations. So, coming from South Carolina to Louisiana, and on that particular plantation, there were 4 other plantations in the area, and I have maps of all of those if anybody would care to see the maps and see the layout and kind of how they were. Allendale was probably the largest one of all. But looking, I'm gonna just briefly, and then we'll have time for questions. We have Land's End, we have Mingo Graham, who married Cora Graham, who had a son, Mingo Jr., then Mingo had a son by the name of Eli, who was Spook Hopper's dad, Eli Graham, and it goes from there. Spook Mama, on the other hand, her father was James Scott, and it's a little difficult to do that because we couldn't find a lot of information on James Scott. So we have a lot of information, and it's too voluminous to go through it all, but I thought I'd give you enough information so that you could ask questions and we could respond from that standpoint. So, any questions? Maurice?
What year was Spook Mama and Spook Papa born?
Spook Mama was born in May the 20th in 1907. Spook Papa was born in 1902. And they were married in December of 1925. When I got out of the service in 1975, we celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, and most of you have those pictures in your homes today.
On the chips.
Spook Mama's name was O.C. Scott. That's why we have the Scott side, and Sam Graham. That's why we have the Graham and the Scott family reunion. Any other question? Yes.
I didn't know about Uncle Edward, who died as a baby. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I can't tell you a lot about, but there were 9 children that were born with Sam and O.C. Graham. Edward, he lived for 5 days, and he died. And Lillian and Maggie and Aunt Neddy may know more about that than I would know.
Okay.
I beg your pardon? Yeah, he was born in 1947. He was between my brother and me. I was born in 1948. He was born in 1947, 1 year before I was born.
Okay.
Yeah.
We lived 5 days.
Yes.
And we made the catch and get storm on the way.
Okay.
Wait, what? The cat?
Yeah. My brother was telling us that